Won't you open your Bibles quickly to Luke chapter 22 and verse 19. I'm going to read it to you from the New American. And when he had taken some bread and given thanks in advance for what was to come, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup which is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." You think you know where we're going today, but you really don't, believe me. I want to speak to you about something that's going to get pretty close to the heart, I think, of a lot of people here, because it's quite sensitive in many ways to where we stand as a nation right at the moment. But I think it's time, and I think it's really important for us as a church to take our rightful place and to have influence. And in order for us to do that, we have to address certain things, and we have to have the courage and the maturity to be able to approach certain subjects in a meaningful and in a constructive way. Is that okay? Yes. We'll speak about all the second service people while they're not here. How about that? The first thing I think that we really need to do is we honestly need to sacrifice some sacred cows. Understand this. As the church, you are called to be a supernatural person. You are no longer a natural person. You are a citizen of the kingdom. And as such, we're supposed to define ourselves appropriately. I don't understand why we have black churches and Spanish churches and white churches. We are supposed to be the church. The minute we start reducing ourselves down to color or culture, we're becoming worldly. Because we're looking at everything natural again. God didn't call us to be natural people. He called us to be supernatural people. He called us to be kingdom citizens, which means it doesn't matter, and it's immaterial as to what culture you come from, what you look like, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Asian, whether you're woman, whether you're man. It makes no difference. You have the life of God on the inside of you, and that's what brings us together, and that's what we celebrate. There is no place in the modern context for segregated churches. I don't want to hear about when it's culturally appropriate. It's not culturally appropriate when you view it from the perspective of the kingdom. We are not an exclusive set. And since I got all your buy-in on that one, we'll really hit home with the next one. You are not called to be a Republican or a Democrat. You are called to be a kingdom citizen. And as such, when you approach your perspective and your view on life and politics and business and everything else that we're supposed to get involved in, the minute we reduce ourselves down to a label which is natural, we've done nothing more than look like the world. We are not called to be the world, we are called to be the church. We are called to be the representation of a higher power and having influence in the world around us. Lots of churches won't go there. Because you know why? It's much easier to placate everybody and let's keep everybody happy so we never address stuff. And the result of it is that we have no influence. We compromise truth to maintain seating. We have to go some places. There are certain principles, and I was thinking about this over Thanksgiving, and Sarah and I had an opportunity to go away for a little while. And when we were coming back on the plane, I was thinking about this because we were going into Thanksgiving. And it's kind of what got this whole thing going. But I think that there are parallels when it comes to new beginnings. Every time you talk about something new and fresh, anytime you talk about growth, every time you talk about expansion, every time you talk about something that's new that's being introduced, you're talking about something that is letting go of where it was, grabbing hold of something new and understanding what that defining truths are that give that the character and the nature that it is. And you take that and you use that as an input to define what the future is going to look like. It's a principle that goes with growth. And I was looking at Jesus when he went and he had the Last Supper. And when he had the Last Supper, the first thing he did is he took the elements and he gave thanks. He gave thanks. You know what the funny thing is? He was giving thanks for something that nobody else in the room had the first clue as to what he was really being thankful for. They didn't understand it until after his death and resurrection. He was talking about stuff that he knew because he could foresee the future. He knew what was coming. There was a prophetic side to him that was sitting talking about the wine and the bread, and he's talking about the blood and the body. And the disciples are saying, this is really cool. He's on like some other pluck again. Does anybody know what he's saying? They didn't get it. But he knew what was happening because what he was doing was sitting saying, you guys don't understand this. But right at the moment, we're moving into a whole new element, a whole new realm, a whole new dimension that you have no concept of, but it's right on the threshold. But he understood that the world that he was looking to introduce to them was going to come at a sacrifice, and the sacrifice was going to be him. So when he took the cup and he took the bread, basically what he was saying was the power of the blood and the broken body was going to introduce a revolution. It was a spiritual revolution. Because all of a sudden what he was saying was, I'm giving you the opportunity to close the door and move away from where you've been. I've given you the opportunity to step out of a paradigm called sin and to step into a whole new realm called grace. You're going to have to let go of where you were in order to grab a hold of where God wants you to be. The thing about it is you need to understand what this realm is all about because it's based on certain things. And the founding principles of it are called truth. And when we begin to move into that space and we begin to realize what it's all about, it begins to have an effect and influence on who we are. Because suddenly we realize that God has made provision for us to have our sins forgiven. And sins forgiven means that I move into a new space called righteousness. And when I move into righteousness, what does righteousness mean? What are the truths that inform righteousness and righteous living? When I have a look at it and I recognize the fact that the body was broken so that I could move into wholeness, and I realize that it offers me divine life and healing, all of a sudden I'm walking into a new realm that is defined by something called grace that he provided for me, that's undergirded by certain truths. And if I can grab a hold of what those truths are and I can make them a part of my life, it affects the trajectory and the outcome of my life. The whole purpose about stepping into something new is that whatever the grounding foundational principles are, whatever the truths are that undergird that, are going to inform the identity of whatever steps into it. And not only does it inform the identity, but it informs the outcome. That's the problem with being sin. When you're in sin, you produce it. But when you're in grace and life, you produce it. That's the whole purpose. What he was saying to us was this: the exciting invitation that I've extended to you is that the person that you used to be should never become an encumbrance to who I've designed you to be. You're supposed to be new and you're supposed to be somebody new, different. The whole premise of the kingdom is that it was designed for people who were free and people who were brave. I'm free from sin and I'm free from death. And I've moved into a whole new paradigm. And I embrace something called bravery. I embrace something called courage. The ability to be able to take who I am and my comfort areas and those places where I've lived and those places that I've explored and to branch out and become a pioneer and move into new spaces that he's created for me to be. There were some unsettled people in Europe about 400 years ago. And they didn't like where they were. They left England because they didn't want to live in a place where the Church of England defined who they were and how they lived. And so they moved out into Europe. But the problem with moving out into Europe is that they still moved into cultures and societies. They still moved into economies that weren't defined by principles that they held dear to. But they were principles that were informed by the governments. And they said, you know what? Things could be different. Why don't we go out there and see if we can create something new? Why don't we have an experiment? Why don't we take our core convictions and our core beliefs? Why don't we take who we are and go out there and blaze the trail and form a whole new land and get that land established and built on foundational truths that we hold to be valuable and dear? And they did it. historians have a look at it and they begin to question, well, was it really motivated and driven for religious freedom? You see, their concept of religious freedom was the Church of England. So what they were really saying was, well, they didn't build a theocracy. A theocracy is like the Church of England. It's kind of like where you have a country that's built on priests who govern because they're supposed to hear from God, and the church governs the nation. But these were not people who wore any kind of a label. These were not church people. There was no one there who was a cardinal or a priest. There was no one there who said, I'm the prophet, this, that, and the next thing. These were everyday people who just simply had a love for God and allowed the truth of who he was to inform who they were and the way that they lived their life. And they said, you know what? Maybe everyday people can do something fantastic. What happens if a group of everyday people who just love God go out and form a brand new nation? And what we do is we instill in that nation a foundation that's based on the truth of who God is and what he's all about. And we take those truths and we allow those truths to form the pillars of a new society, a new economy, a new social structure. They had no intention of building the Church of America. What they were saying was, we're just carpenters. We fix shoes. We're farmers, accountants, storekeepers. We just want to live life, but we know that there is a truth that should govern it and should inform it. And all we're saying is we want to live in a paradigm and in a place where those fundamentals are truth. Those fundamentals are there and they inform all of that stuff. When you have a look at some of the writings of early people who came out from then, the Mayflower Compact, it was written, it was an agreement that was composed by the new settlers who had just arrived. And they said, having undertaken for the glory of God an advancement of the Christian faith, not the church, the faith, and the honor of the king and country, that was the little bit that they later regretted, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. What were they saying? Our motivation is rare. Our motivation is transparent. Our motivation is because we want to take those things that we believe to be fundamental truths and we want them to inform the way that we live and the society in which we find ourselves. Patrick Henry, he was a 5-time governor of Virginia. And he said, amongst other strange things said of me, I hear it said by the deists that I am one of their number. And indeed that some people think that I am no Christian. This thought gives me much more pain than the appellation of Tory, because I think religion of infinitely higher importance than politics. And I find much cause to reproach myself that I have lived so long and have given no decided and public proofs of my being a Christian. But indeed, my dear child, this is a character which I prize far above all the world has or can boast. Thomas Jefferson said, I have little doubt that the whole country will soon be rallied to the unity of our Creator, and I hope to the pure doctrines of Jesus also. Don't tell me that the fundamental beliefs of who they were and the truths were not something that they got from God. It was. And it's something that informed what this nation was built on and what it was all about. The problem with it was, when they got over here, they realized that they brought a little bit of baggage with them. And so they wrote something called the Declaration of Independence. Do you know what the Declaration of Independence was? It was an apology for a revolution. What it said was, do you know what? We don't want to be the way that we used to be. We're sorry we brought the baggage over here because that's what we trained to get away from. But that's not what we want. We fundamentally believe in the fact that the Creator has given each person the right to pursue freedom and life and happiness. And what they're saying is, you compromised that where we were living, and we're sorry that we did that. But now we're going to rectify the situation because we're going to have a rebellion. And we're going to move away, and for once and for all, we're going to kick that out, and we're going to start something new. We're going to move away from everything that used to be, everything that used to define our living when we were in Europe, and even the little bits that we brought over here. We're moving away from that. We want to start something new. And the new thing that we're going to put into place is going to be something that is fundamentally built on the truth that our Creator has given everyone certain rights. It's not something that's going to be validated by any human being, but it's going to be validated by Him. That's right. The Declaration of Independence justified a rebellion, but it gave birth to something called the Constitution, which instituted stable government. You see, what it did was, it said, I don't want to be a part of that past. So let's get rid of it. But what we'll do is, now that we understand who we are and what we're all about, we're going to birth something called a Constitution. And that Constitution is going to be an expression that is built and birthed out of the revelation of what God, the Creator, has done for us. They had an understanding, and they knew there was a fundamental principle that people could apply to their life that said, if you build your house on the rock, it will stand. If you build your house on a foundation based on spiritual truth, what will end up happening is that truth will have expression and form and give stability and give rigidity and give prosperity and give blessing to the house. And what they said is, if we could do it in a personal context, maybe we could do it in a corporate context. Maybe we could do it in a national context. What if we built a nation on God, on spiritual truths? So they introduced something called the free market. What a wonderful idea. You know what it was based on? The idea that God created you to be who He wanted you to be. So you should have the prerogative to take your gifts and your talents and your abilities. You should have the ability and the prerogative to go out there and to expand and to exercise those giftings in the way that you want. And your ability to be able to do that is going to reap rewards for you. And you should be able to enjoy the rewards of the investment that you've made. But they never wanted you to forget where it came from. So what they did is they took something which is the most fundamental part of economics, which is called the dollar bill. And every time you use that and trade that, every time you exchange it for something new, staring you back in the face is something that says, in God we trust. They didn't want a society that was based on what people thought. They didn't want a society based on previous history and where they've been. They wanted a society based on the fact that God has called each person specifically to be able to live out their dream and who they should be. And so they introduced something in later years that when you got to the place where you stood up to say the Pledge of Allegiance and you stood in front of that flag, what you did is you honored God. And you recognized God as being an integral part in the fabric of society. The Declaration of Independence, the Creator has given all men certain rights. A recognition that God should inform the structure and the role of government. That's what the country was built on. It birthed things called the American dream. Never heard about the Cuban dream, have you? Hear about the Venezuelan dream? Why do you hear about the American dream? Because the American dream speaks about the possibility that it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what your roots were. It doesn't matter what your upbringing was. It doesn't matter where you've been. But you find yourself in a society that is prepared to embrace upward mobility and create a space where you can go and you can be everything that you want to be. The whole purpose of the American dream is to sit and say, it doesn't happen by chance. But it happens because fundamentally the groundwork and the foundation is established on the truth that God has created you to be someone. Do something with who you are and what He's given you to be. It comes by hard work. It comes by dedication. It comes by commitment. It comes by investment. It comes by risk-taking. It's about entrepreneurship and creativity. It's about innovation. Do something with who you are. It doesn't happen by chance. It doesn't happen by chance. But it's open to everyone. It birthed the idea, the land of the free and the home of the brave. You're free to be who you want to be. You're free to live how you want to live. You're free to take the fundamental structures that God has provided for you and for you to even explore who you should be. And there are times in our lives where we move away from what truth is. But that's okay. Because God says, you know what? I'm always there for you. I may not want the choices you've made, and I may not desire some of the avenues you're going down, because I don't think that it's best for you. But I'm affording you the opportunity and the privilege to make the choice of how you want to go. But know this, the foundation will always be there. And you can always come back to what it's all about. It's about bravery. Everybody goes through hardships. Life is not predictable. There are going to be challenges and there are going to be things that come into people's lives. And I think it's valuable and it's good and it's healthy for society to be there, to help people in times of need, to help them when they need it, to extend a hand of compassion and say, you know what, I can see what's going on there right now. Let me put something in there that'll help you through where you are. The point is, it's to help you to get over a hump. It's to help you get out of a rut. It's not for you to stay where you are. You have too much inside of you to stay there. It's not because people lack compassion, but it's because people sit and say, I value you too much and I see too much inside of you to leave you where you are. And sometimes you need a little bit of a kick in the pants to say, you need to move up a little bit. Do you know that the founding fathers were infinitely wise in recognizing the fact that if you gave people individual freedoms and you allowed them the opportunity to explore their creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship, as a result of people flourishing, what ended up happening is it translated into a nation that flourished. You take away individual privilege and you compromise the nation. And so we find ourselves at an interesting place right now because society is changing. And things are not the way that they used to be. And right at the moment, I believe that there's a civil war that's happening in America right now. But it's not a war against flesh and blood. We wage against principalities and powers. But I can tell you now that there is very much a movement afoot to remove references to God, to remove our fundamental pillars and the truths that establish this nation. There is an attack on that. Things are different now to what they used to be. You know, when you were growing up, your parents always used to say, you have to be careful because society isn't what it used to be, and look at the stuff going on. And now you have underage drinking, and you have people smoking weed, and and none of that stuff is right, and nobody wants. I get all of that. The thing about it is, sometimes people go through different things to finally come to the place where they should be. The problem with it is, you may abuse your liberties. That's one thing, but you never attack the foundation. That's the difference between then and now. You see, then was about abusing liberties, so you could do certain things and get away with it. And it may not have been right, and people may have liked it or not liked it, and it may not have been in line with truth. The fact of the matter is it didn't do any fundamental damage to who the nation was. The problem right at the moment is that we have a move afoot, and it's presenting itself in the form of a secular society. What it really says is this. This is the whole concept of secular society. God has an idea, and God has a reference point for who we should be, how the economy should run, how the country should be, what the morals should be. But we as government know better. So what we think we should do is, let's replace God as the foundation, and let's instill government. Because you see, government takes into consideration who all of you are. And what we will do is we will accommodate everybody in our thinking. Always a dangerous precedent. You see, the problem with it is this. If you have a look at it, you can see little aspects of it flaring up around the place. We have a free economy. You know what a free economy means? It means that you can be who you want to be. And the rewards that you get for that, you have the freedom to choose what you want to do with what you get from it. That's right. And some of the most generous people are the wealthiest people in this country. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to be as successful as we can, because many other nations aren't. But what is creeping in is a socialist set, which is all of a sudden gaining traction. And it sounds so good, because what it says is, why should everybody have the opportunity to be able to extend and realize their full dream when we have a small percentage of people who are very wealthy? Maybe what we should do is we should take all of that and appropriate it for everybody else. It sounds so good. You know what the problem with it is? It's moving away from free market economy, and it's moving into a context where government all of a sudden starts to sit and say, hold on a minute, we're going to tell you how much money we think you should make. And then we're going to tell you what we think you should do with it. And we're going to tell you how much of that money you should give back to government. And we're going to tell you how much of it should go into... What's happening? It's no longer free market anymore. Suddenly we've moved from a place where God says, I'm giving you the freedom and the liberty to be who you want to be and to exercise that, and to move to a place where once you get the reward for innovation and risk and all the rest of it, you take that and handle it appropriately. To a place where government starts to define what that should look like. Hasn't worked particularly well in other places, but it's knocking at the door. We have a secular set that's trying to approach and change the way that society functions and the fabric of society. You see, we don't want to take God as truth anymore, because it really inhibits our modern viewpoint of life. We're so advanced that what we really believe is God doesn't really offer objective truth anymore. We'll move to the place of subjective truth. So all of a sudden, people can start identifying any way that they want. The problem with it is, people, it's always a fine balance, because there are some people who genuinely struggle to understand what their identity is. I get that. And I really feel for those people, because everybody has struggles in life, and perhaps that's a struggle that you have. I get it. The problem with it is this: the only thing that I can tell you is that God says to you, there is still truth. And if you choose to define your life the way that you want to, He extends you the prerogative of doing that. But what He says is, know this: there's always truth available. Why is it important? Because what's ending up happening is we no longer just have the liberty to be that what we want to be. What ends up happening is a secular society says, let's rather take the outcomes of all of those things and use it to change the fundamentals of the country. So we no longer want to have objective truth anymore. Now we want to have subjective truth that's defined by everybody else, and that becomes the foundation as to what is socially appropriate, what defines the social fabric of our society. You don't believe it's dangerous? We have a candidate running for presidency who a couple of weeks ago made the suggestion that the church should be penalized for not embracing gay marriage. And what should happen is that the church should actually lose their non-profit status until they embraced gay marriage. Did you think you'd ever hear that in America? What I'm telling you is this: things are changing. And so it becomes important for the church to identify what our role is. In Acts chapter 2, Jesus told the disciples, and He told a whole bunch of them, go and wait in the upper room Can I go on for a few minutes? If you need to leave, I understand. I need to finish this. Go and wait in the upper room. And they got there and they waited in the upper room. And they were praying. And the Holy Spirit came upon them. And the Holy Spirit baptized them. There was something that happened to them in the upper room that was transformational in their own lives. They stepped into a dimension of revelation they hadn't had before. They stepped into a dimension of power that they had never known before. Point is, the reason all of that happened was for purpose. The reason that happened was because of the Great Commission. Go. Go into all the world. The challenge that we have nowadays is that we have people who want to live in the upper room. The challenge we have nowadays is we have a church, in many ways, he comes in here and we celebrate, and that's wonderful. And we have wonderful praise and worship, and that's really good. And we have great teaching, which is really good. And we get pastored and we get nurtured and we get taken care of. And we have community, and those things are wonderful and those are great. The problem with it is it's supposed to be something that once we get in here, it touches, it affects us, it changes us for something that we're supposed to do out there. It becomes an indulgence when all we ever do is we come to church to enjoy those places and those paradigms. It becomes an indulgence when we enjoy what God has for us. And we don't recognize the fact that he's doing something within us so that we can do something out there. We are called to something greater. We are called to something more. The problem with government is government was never called and doesn't have the ability to change people. It can manage immorality through legislation, but it can't instill morality in people. Why? Because it can't change a heart. The only thing that can change a heart is God. The church is needed because when we go out there, we have the ability and the capability to affect people at their core. And when you change a person, I have to read you something. When you change a person's heart, you change the way that they live, the way that they see, the way that they move, the way that they vote, the way that they live. Somewhere in here somewhere. I had a note. William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. He wrote in the early 1700s, government seems to me to be a part of religion itself. Let men be good, and the government cannot be bad. Let men be good and the government cannot be bad. What is he saying? Government becomes an expression of society. And when the church doesn't step up to our role of being the light and the salt, I haven't got time to read this. The light and the salt out there, the problem with it is we have a society that is lost. And so they listen to things and they vote in ways that we as Christians sit and say, oh, no, that's not a good idea. It's important for you to have a voice. It's important for you to have a voice. But not only in politics, not only through voting. It's important for you to have a voice with people that you run into out there. The church was put in place, and the church was designed to have influence. God created this nation, and it was birthed out of a foundation of truth, God's truth. Whether you recognize that or not, whether people recognize that or not, is not the point. The point is the reason for this nation's prosperity is because of its roots. When you attack the roots, you're going to affect the fruit. It's important for the church to stand up. Don't stand on the side of the road with placards saying homosexuals are going to hell, God hates. That's not God's intention. That's flesh. Can I just say one more thing? And then I promise you can go. The problem with the church, unfortunately, is that we've raised people who are good religious people. Unfortunately, they're not great citizens of the kingdom. The problem with it is, what ended up happening is because we haven't instilled truth on the inside of them, they're vulnerable and susceptible to deception. So what ends up happening is, I'll give you an example. Many people in the church today, their concept of love is distorted. And they think love really means I need to be all-embracing. If I'm not all-embracing, I'm not loving. And God says, well, Jesus had a lot to say about that when he was turning over some tables. What did he do? He sat and said the reason that love has to roar sometimes is because love believes and stands and is established on truth. And there comes a time where it has to sit and say, you know what? I love you and I wish you all the best. And you can choose how you want to live. That's your prerogative. But I have to tell you this, that there is a right way and there is a wrong way. There is something called truth, and truth will always lead you to a pathway that is good, that is prosperous, that is beneficial, that is rooted in blessing. And you step outside of that, it's a choice. But your life won't exude those qualities. In whatever area. And I haven't got time for the last point. We have an important role, a very important role. And all we can do is really take responsibility for where we are and what God has called us to do as living faith. And I know he's working through lots of bodies, but that's not our home. But it becomes important for us to recognize the reality of what we're living in, and to identify and step into our role as being influencers in society. Taking truth and making that an integral part of the way that we live. Reaffirming and protecting the foundational truths that are the pillars to what this country is all about.